Welcome to another part of the Australian Comic Book Day live stream by ComX. Today, in this episode, we've got Shaun Keenan and Daz or Darren Close here to talk about Kickstarters. And as these guys are quite professional at Kickstarters, I thought they were the best people to come in and tell us what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing.
That's
over to you, Shaun.
Well, I guess whoever's watching, if you have questions, just pop them in the chat because I think we could speak far longer than an hour about Kickstarter in regards to what to do, what not to do, how the best way about going about things is. So I guess Darren and I we will kind of start spitballing here in regards to what Kickstarter is and why we use it. But then if people have specific questions that they would like answer around certain topics within Kickstarter, then just put that in the chat and we will answer those ones. So I guess for Kickstarter, if people don't know what it is, you must be living under a rock, but it's one of the most famous crowdfunding platforms out there. It's a great platform for raising funds for comics. Comics has this year been the number one category with the highest amount of successful campaigns. So it's sitting at about 70%, which is almost 20% off the next category. So a lot of creators like myself and Darren and even you, Shane, now have used Kickstarter to raise funds to either produce the book or predominantly to get the book printed and distribute and that all of ourselves. So, yeah.
Here's our first question.
What is one thing you see people get wrong? Oh, wow.
Is there just one thing?
Yeah. I think the biggest one that I get frustrated with is someone will have an amazing banner. So that very first image that you see on Kickstarter and you're like, oh, sweet. Okay, you've got me to click on your campaign. And then I get into the campaign and it's literally just text with no artwork, with no details around the project. It's literally, I've got this idea for a comic. It's the best comic in the world, and I would love you to help you to fund me my comic. And you're like, oh, okay. So that's the biggest thing that I've seen, and I guess that's a lot of the time first time creators. So the biggest thing around that is before you launch a Kickstarter is really go out and do your research. Like, kind of when you're doing anything in regards to business or creating, and Darren, you can even talk about drawing. You can just get out there and do something and just do it from scratch. But I guess the best place to start is to actually do a little research before you do that, because you're going to learn a lot quicker by doing that. What's the one thing you see, Daz?
I think no pre-launch is probably the biggest mistake that I see a lot of people do. They won't tell anyone what they're doing. Sometimes they'll even try and keep it a secret, or there's something coming great and I'm not going to tell you about it. But they just launch and think all they have to do is press the launch button on Kickstarter and then all the money starts coming in.
Yeah.
And you have to promote. No one, or you get very little organic clicks through Kickstarter. People aren't going through, not a lot of people are going through Kickstarter looking for interesting comic projects from scratch and going, oh yeah, I'll back that. There's a couple, but there's not many. So if you build it, they will come. No. You got to tell people about it. You got to tell people a month out that it's coming. You want to build a crowd and bring them to your Kickstarter when it's launched. Make them anticipate it. Like we're excited to see what you've got, sort of thing.
Yep.
But don't just click launch and then just leave it and think, oh, okay, that's sorted. That'll take care of itself. No, it won't.
No, and I think the pre-launch page that Kickstarter brought out, probably this time last year, has been amazing feature that's been added on, because it does give you that 1 month, that 2 months, that 3 months prior to your project launching to start garnering all those people to say, hey, this is the project, this is what it's about, and everything. And I'll put my hand up and say I'm the first person that was like, I don't want to give too much of my story away, and I don't want to show too much of my artwork and everything like that, when in reality, to get people excited, you actually need to show them something. You need to show them what they're going to get, what the story is about, and what that hook in the story is, type of thing. So I gotta say I've fallen trapped to that before. So
I'm just sharing your guys' Kickstarters, actually. I thought that'd be a good moment too.
Sure.
Oh, old man Rufus. So you've got one going at the moment, which is already fully funded. Is that correct?
Yeah. It's I think about 115% at this stage.
Nice.
But I mean, like yourself, we're never really just settling for funded. We're always trying to push it as far as we can get it. It's going pretty well so far, with a lot of time left. So it's just a matter of continuing to push it, because I've got a lot of backers from previous campaigns that haven't come back for this one. So that's something I'm conscious of and trying to see what the issue is there. I think the main thing, and this is probably one of the mistakes that we were talking about before of what not to do with Kickstarters, is don't launch until you've delivered your previous book or your previous campaign rewards. I had some health issues about a month ago that delayed me from doing that. I had pretty much everything lined up in a row, for people would get their books and then the campaign would launch like a week later or something like that. So what I'm finding is I'm trying to convince a lot of people and prove, like, from the sake of taking photos of proofs and getting photos and videos from the printer floor to show these books are being printed, just to really reinforce to my previous backers that yes, these books are coming. I know you might be hesitant to back this one when you haven't got these yet. So a lot of this campaign will be me really reinforcing, showing photos of when they arrive, unboxing, sending shipping parcels out, me at the post office going, hey, what are you? Just really trying to, I think there's a level of trust that goes with setting up a Kickstarter, and you really have to prove that, you do what you say. You do what you say you're going to do and fulfill your promises. And I'm relatively new to Kickstarter. I probably only started a couple of years ago, and I'd been publishing comics for 20 years. So I think a lot of people in the local scene know that I'm good for it. Like, I'm not going to not publish my comic books, but to a lot of these Kickstarter people, they didn't know me at all before backing the last campaign. So just really going to the extra level to show that, and I think that's part of building a campaign that you and I do, Shaun, is we show where the money's, we have a breakdown, sort of this is where the money's going, the artists are getting this much, the printing is going to cost this much, and also this is how I'm going to ship it. I've got particular hard cardboard protection so that the books arrive to you in perfect nick. That a lot of it is really just proving you know what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I've started to do with my campaigns is really highlight the fact that how much I have fulfilled, and so that you've got that backer confidence. You're building that backer confidence to go, hey, I've ran 15, 16, 17 Kickstarters. I've fulfilled all of them. If you back this project, you know what you're gonna kind of get. But just one more thing going back onto mistakes that you make, like the 13th label that I've launched now. I was speaking to you last night, Daz, saying that I feel like I've maybe launched them too close together because I have a few projects going on now. I think it's really important to kind of, give yourself some breathing space to do that campaigning of the next project and everything. You're not going straight out of one straight into another, which is what I've kind of done this time. So,
yeah, I find that too. In that, I've been doing Kickstarters helping other people.
Yep.
Helping to run their campaigns as a sort of like a side gig. And what I'm finding is a lot of people don't realize that it's not me that's actually doing that fulfillment or putting that book together. So I'm fielding questions from people. Oh, when is the book shipping? And I'm like, well, I have no idea. That's once the campaign ends, that's where my involvement is finished. So on that sense, I'm finding in regards to the breather you were talking about between campaigns, I have to be careful because a lot of what people see is me running Kickstarters, and it's not always, maybe not always apparent, apart from the fact whether it's a Killaroo book, that people might be fatigued from hearing from me about Kickstarters when I'm working for others.
Yeah, I guess that's.
And then when I'm running my own campaign, they're sort of like, "Oh, geez, another one." And it's like, "Well, I haven't run one in 6 months." But, you were running that one last month, So, yeah, just that level of Kickstarter fatigue, and particularly the promotion on social media, you have to be very careful. So I keep promoting other people's campaigns probably to a minimum on my own social channels, and I generally try to be made an admin to their Instagram or to their Kickstarter or their Facebook page, so that I can keep promotion going for them, but it's not necessarily coming from me.
Yeah, 100%.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So what is the hardest part about a Kickstarter? Wow. That's a tough question. I think with Kickstarter, there is a lot of really hard parts, but the two that I will talk about is, I think, setting a realistic target. So understanding that you might want a $10,000 goal, but you haven't built that audience for that project yet. So understanding that you might be able to make a $4,000 goal, but you might need to put your own money or what we call your own skin in the game to fund the rest of it. So that's like one downside I find to the hardest thing of Kickstarter. And then the second part is the distribution side. So like, especially when you have a lot of international backers, which is fantastic. Like, Kickstarter gives you access to those international backers. But when Australia Post between now, which is Saturday, and Monday, when you're going to ship it out, can change the shipping rates by up to 25%. Like, it makes it quite hard to set those realistic shipping finances and targets and everything. So the one thing that, and I don't know if you've done this, Daz, but the one thing I haven't tried is there is now a third-party software called BackerKit where you can charge the shipping through there, so you don't pay it at the Kickstarter, and you pay it when you're about to ship. And I think that is quite a clever idea, especially during this COVID, where the rates are fluctuating so much, that is actually a really good tool that I haven't used myself yet, but I'm looking at doing that in the future.
Okay.
Cool.
Just on that last.
Sorry. Oh, you want to go on that? Sorry. Yep.
that last question, what's the hardest part? And probably a tack on to what Shaun said is, like I set my Kickstarter goal for Old Man Rufus at, I think it was just under $7,000. And I did the numbers before I launched the campaign, and it's about $8,000, like to get the book coloured and get pay the artist, pay the colorist, cover the printing and the shipping.
Yep.
It comes up to about $8,000. So I deliberately asked for $1,000 less than what I actually knew it was going to cost, because I thought I was pushing my crowd, as you mentioned, Shaun, too far to try and get $8,000 and get it quickly as far as momentum goes. Like with Kickstarter, there's a lot of momentum involved in, you want to get to target as quickly as you can. And once you do reach that threshold, people start coming on board because the hesitancy is not there, because they're sort of like, oh, I don't know whether I'm going to back it because it hasn't reached target yet. When it does reach target, all of those people go, oh, okay, now I'll back it.
Yeah.
Because I know it'll happen. It's been funded, all sweet. So you're dealing with a lot of psychology and of the customer and the customer experience. So, I was prepared to essentially, as you said, Shaun, if I only just barely made target, it was going to cost me another $1,000 on top to get the book done. And I was prepared to wear that. So, these are the sort of things you have to consider, because, as you say, people will ask for 10, 15, 25 grand or something like that. And I find with a lot of those campaigns, they really struggle because it just doesn't seem like an attainable goal to the crowd that they've developed at that stage. You see publishers like Brian Pulido and Top Cow. They'll set a target of 50,000 and they'll get it in an hour because they've got such a huge crowd of following behind them. But for the indie guys like you and me, Shaun, it's not that easy.
No. Yeah, and just to touch on that as well, it's like you've curated your audience over 20 years, but then trying to convert them to a new platform and bring them across, you're not going to convert every single one of your community across as well. So that is another part that you need to take into account when you're doing that financing side. So
definitely.
Yep.
Sorry, what was the next question
for you? Yep.
100%. Always worry about over promoting. But the biggest thing that I've found, especially with Facebook, so predominantly the audience that I target is on Facebook. I have started more recently using Instagram, but I'm shocking on Twitter, and I just feel totally old and lost on TikTok. So I haven't gone down that rabbit hole. But the biggest thing that I've found is how many people say, oh, I didn't even realize you had a Kickstarter going. And that's because of Facebook algorithms, the link that you use, the time of the day that you post, the audience that you're going for, all that type of stuff. So that was something that I was super worried about, especially at the beginning. And I'll let you speak to this, Daz, but I love how you always say at the start of a campaign, hey guys, just putting it out there. I apologize for the next month, but your feed's going to be inundated with that stuff. But I have to say, I'm a friend with you on Facebook and everything like that. I actually, even though I know it's on, I actually haven't seen that much. And I know how much you promote and everything. So that's why I would really tell people that that's something that they shouldn't be worried about. I know it's hard to kind of get past that, but that's something that you shouldn't. And in regards to losing your audience, I don't think if your audience is interested in your product, that you sharing it multiple times is going to turn them off your project. If they're really a fan and want to back your project, I don't think sharing it multiple times, if anything, if I've shared it and people have seen it multiple times, I've actually found that they've gone, oh, he must need a little bit more support, and they've on-shared it. So it's actually had the opposite effect. It's actually helped get the word out. But that's just me. So I'll let you speak to it.
Well, I mean, like you said, the first thing I do is I apologize in advance to everyone who might be seeing my feed quite a bit. But as you say, Shaun, because of the algorithms involved that we don't have any control over, we have no idea how many of our crowd are actually seeing what it is we're doing. And, the 15th post you put up about it might reach that person, whereas the other 14 didn't. So, it's a crapshoot. You just have to keep trying. I think the main thing is you don't show the same image or the same promotion over and over and over and over again. You've got to have variety in what it is you're showing. So, I mean, for today, I posted a Instagram and Facebook link to one of the reward tiers, which highlights one of the pieces of original art, which I haven't done for the last 5 days. It's sort of like, well, I haven't shown this page. Here's something new. So if someone is seeing multiple posts from me, they're seeing all different ones.
Yep.
So at least I'm trying to keep it interesting and bring to the attention things that they may not have seen.
Yeah, and you touched on before in the last question about customer psychology, and I don't know if people know, but on average, someone needs to see something 6 times before they purchase it. So with your Kickstarter, it actually means they need to see you posting up about it, or see that it's out there, or see something about that project 6 times before they purchase it. And that goes back to that pre-launch page and building up that excitement to a project, is because if you can get those 6 views before you launch, then that's when you're more inclined to get that more backers on day one, rather than hearing about it 2 or 3 days or the day of launch and then not backing until about halfway through your project.
Yeah.
Yep. We've got another question for you.
How do you know when it's the right time to do your first Kickstarter in terms of size of your reader base or people being aware who you are, etc.? I don't think there's a right time ever. I think you need to do a pre-launch page, gauge the amount of people that you can follow your work, and then I think there's more of a formula in regards to doing that. So if you're only wanting to raise $1,000 and your comic costs $20, then you're going to need 50 backers. So on average, most campaigns have between 20 to 30% of the people that follow the project end up backing it. So if you need 50 backers, then that means you need to try and get 150 people to follow your project prior to launching. That's a very rough kind of idea in regards to how to work out, or you think this goes back to understanding, if you're going for $20,000 and your product's $20, then you're going to need 10,000, on average about 10,000 backers to make that target. Like, do you have that audience? If you've only got 1,000 followers on Instagram and 500 on Facebook and that, well, then you know that you're nowhere near being able to reach that target. So I think that question goes a little bit on your target and how many people you can get, following and looking at your project prior to launching.
Yeah, I think you're right there, Shaun. And so far as, you and I are both, I would guess you would call us disciples of the word of Tyler James, who has been doing a program called ComX with an X launch for probably 5-10 years now. It's probably the best known podcast about crowdfunding, particularly to comics. And there's actually a full, essentially a university course on how to actually do and Kickstarters to have the best success. But one of the biggest things that Tyler always drums into us is a failed Kickstarter is not a failure. It's a case of what you're doing is you're doing research. You're going, okay, is there a market? Have I got the followers or the base to deliver this particular campaign? And it doesn't cost you anything. If a campaign fails, there's no cost apart from your own time and so forth, but it gives you a lot of data as to, okay, where am I reaching? Particularly if you plug it into, Google Analytics and so forth, you can really track the stats. I know Stephen Koch is big on the stats, on seeing just where people are coming from and where you're reaching, from how many click through from an email, how many click through from a Facebook ad or a promotion. So, and I think probably the key is to keep your target low. I don't think someone who's never run a Kickstarter before should be running a $10,000, $15,000 campaign, because it's a big ask. Whereas if you ask for 1,000, I know Gary Della, who does the Reverie books that I've done some work on, his recent Rick McClune campaign was only, I think, 1,200 was his target goal. And he reached it easily because he kept it low. Yeah. And, he'll probably double, triple, quadruple that amount of money. So he'll be able to make more books. But by setting that target low, as soon as you reach it, then a lot of more momentum can come into play. And just being realistic about, if you're not sure that you've got a good reader base, do a campaign and set it at that low bar and see if you get there. And then with your next one, you might go a little higher or a little higher on top of that. And and one last thing I think that Shaun would agree is, Shaun and I back a lot of other Kickstarters. I don't know about you, Shaun, but I'm like over 150 campaigns over the years that I've backed. And
300,
there you go. And people can see that. When you and I run a campaign and they see the little photo who's running this campaign, they can see that we've backed a lot of projects. And that's kind of there's a real community sense of giving and taking.
Especially in comics.
Yeah.
I find it much more in comics than any other category. That I think that's one thing that people really look on. So this, you're really good tip here that, if you haven't backed anything and you're launching your first campaign, it will be much harder to get that support.
Because there's a level of credibility that goes with that number.
Yeah.
And just shows that, you're in it for everyone else as much as you are for yourself.
Yep. Here's the next question here. What is the key to creating an audience that will come back? That's by Steve.
Oh.
SK.
Well, I think there's again, that's a two-part question. One, having a good product. So if you don't have a good product, it doesn't matter if you raise $10,000 the first time you go out. If no one kind of liked what you put out, well, then they're not going to come back. So I think that is part one, and then part two is that experience. Yeah. So did you communicate with them about any delays or issues? Did you fulfill on time? Did you make sure that you were communicating with them personally rather than just doing one big emails? Like the one thing that I've noticed creators start doing is they'll do individual like thank yous when people back and everything like that, which I think's amazing. So all of those little things I think add up to getting someone to come back and support you. But I think really it's about making sure you do those fundamental things right, and that they have a good experience. So you've got a good product, so you can give them a good experience, and then they'll come back. And I think that goes for any other, like a retail store, a restaurant, anything. You go in, you have good food, you have a good experience, you go back. You go in, you have a crap experience, and get berated by the waiter or something. You're like, well, these I'm not coming back here. So I think that is the same for the Kickstarter platform and growing your audience.
Yeah, I think I would agree with all of that, and I would probably add, you can have the best product, the best looking comic, the best production, but what I find is a lot of campaigns, they will charge, like speaking for myself as well, I charge a pretty decent rate for shipping. And there's a reason for that, because I will always pack it with bubble wrap, with cardboard. I make it so that Australia Post could probably shoot a bullet at it and it wouldn't dent the book. And I see a lot of campaigns, and quite a few local campaigns as well. And it'll be a nice book. They ran a good campaign, they delivered on time, and then they put it in a paper bag. And they might have written on the paper bag, "Do not bend." And they think, oh, well, that'll get there, no dramas. And if finally you've fulfilled the book and they receive it and it's bent, they're not coming back.
Yeah.
No.
You've fallen short at the last hurdle, but it's a game changer.
Yeah.
If the book doesn't arrive in perfect condition, that's not the postie's fault. That's your fault. You didn't pack it properly.
Yep.
And I think
Love
that's
that.
a cardinal sin.
Yeah.
Agreed. First time viewer.
What's your favorite, most popular stretch goal? Also, same for reward tier. My reward tier I'll do first is always the drawing. I absolutely love the drawing. I love the opportunity to give the opportunity of our backers, of our super fans, of anyone to actually be in the book. I think that's one of the awesome tiers that I always love. I've even started flipping it up and doing incentive covers so you can get drawn onto a front cover, and we do an exclusive cover type of thing. So I always think that's the best reward tier. Stretch goals, man. I hate doing stretch goals. I just like, and Darren, you could talk about this, about your first Kickstarter that you fulfilled, and how you can go into a stretch goal nightmare tunnel like type of thing. But I guess whenever you're thinking about a stretch goal, my advice would be low cost, perceived high value. So you're wanting to be able to produce something at a low cost, but has a perceived higher value, so that when people are getting it, they're like, wow, like I'm getting this extra thing for absolutely nothing. It's got to be worth heaps. But in reality, that it's not costing you much money. I've seen a lot of projects fail because of the stretch goals. Like they've added pins and stickers and bookmarks and all that, and before they realize it, those printing costs ate so much into the money that they raised that they end up having to either fork over some of their own money to fulfill, or were just left with nothing type of thing. The campaign.
That was definitely a hard learning experience for me with my first book, which was this campaign, the Four Horsemen.
I did love it. I love my swag.
But there was bonus prints, there was stickers, there were trading cards, and the real one that hurt was I had a hard enamel pin made, which looks gorgeous. Like I still get people wanting to buy just the pin when I go to conventions and so forth. So it's a very high quality item, but it's a very high price unit cost item. And I had that many stretch goals unlocked on that campaign that people who just bought the book, people like you, Shaun, I lost money.
People like you.
Anyone who just bought the book by itself, one copy, I lost money because all the excess printing and everything that you were talking about just all adds up. And, you know, it's a great customer experience.
It was.
But it's not great for the person footing the bill.
No.
But in regards to the actual question, I think favorite stretch goal. A lot of what I try to do with the stretch goal is, as we were talking before, I try to add value to the book itself, rather than an external extra item like a print or a sticker. With Semper Fi, we had a stretch goal that basically expanded the number of pages in the book. So it went from a 48-page book to a 64-page book. And I think with Young Rufus, I had one of the upgrades of the stretch goal was it upgraded the book from a saddle stitch book to a perfect bound book with a glued spine. So it does end up adding to your unit cost, but the actual product that you get at the end, which I always overprint to sell at conventions and so forth afterwards, all of that benefit, it created a better finished product. So it's kind of an invisible stretch goal because they didn't get anything bonus. And in fact, a couple of times I've created stretch goals where, for example, Semper Fidelis, I always intended for that to be a perfect bound book, but I didn't tell the backers that. So I put a stretch goal of within a region of where I thought the book would come. I'll upgrade the book from saddle stitched to perfect bound, but that was always my intention. But to the backers, they thought this is a bonus that I'm getting.
Yeah.
And so that perceived added value, which doesn't cost you anything extra, I think they're the best. And obviously also prints. If you're going to get prints done, I never make them any larger than the size of a comic book. I don't want to be shipping prints separately. It all has to be in the same package.
Yep.
I did that mistake. Yeah, A5 prints all the way now. So
yeah, A5, or I'll upgrade to actual comic size, so 17 by 26 centimeters, so I can put them in the same sleeve as the comic.
There you go.
You got a bit of a fan of the pin?
Yeah. I think most of them did arrive in a box. I had a thin sort of mailing box for those. And that was also the tricky thing, was because those hard enamel pins have that little nub on the back and obviously the spike, that becomes an element that you have to be careful doesn't damage your comic book in transit. So what I ended up doing was I'd have that either separately bubble wrapped, but I'd have the face of the badge, the flat part facing the comic, and the nub facing the external of the box. And because I was wrapping it so tightly, the nub actually stuck into the cardboard and meant that it didn't move until you opened it. So that was saved a lot of damage that way. So you got to be creative about how you do these things. And if you're going to do high-end items, like that pin cost me I had to do one for every backer. So it was about 300 pins. It was about $1,400. That's a big chunk of cash compared to, everything else that you're doing extra. So I still like the idea of having enamel pins, but now I want to have them below 20 grand. If the campaign looks like it's going to get to 25 or something like that, I'll set it. I'll make it like an extra 5 grand stretch goal, and that might be the only item. So if I make 5, I'll swallow 1,400 of it so you can get a free pin. But I'm not going to do it in a $1,000 increment because I lose money.
Makes sense. But
yeah, that's. I think I got better feedback for that pin than I did for the book. So.
Is that the one with Killaroo's head? I can't remember which one. That's the it's one. Right here. I have it right here next to me. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, my little girl's got it. She absolutely loved it. I lost that, I think, on day 2. I was like, oh, this is cool. And she saw it and was like, that was it. I lost it. And I was like, oh, come on, man. So, but also going back to like your shipping and everything like that, if you like, I usually weigh my books or have an idea of the weight of my books so I can calculate shipping. If you start doing all of these add-ons, like especially physical add-ons, and then realize that you've now
pushes it into that next shipping one.
Yeah, pushes you into that next shipping class. Like, then that not only costs you more for the rewards, it now costs you so much more for shipping, which is crazy. And that's
especially international shipping.
Oh, yeah. And that's why for me, I like now to try and do that first stretch goal as maybe like a digital stretch goal. So so then the digital backers get something as well, whether that be a wallpaper or people are doing scripts now, which is kind of cool. I like to see how people are writing and set out their books and stuff like that. So I enjoy that. So yeah, there's a bunch of different things you can kind of do that have value but don't cost you, everything that you've made over the top of your goals. So
yeah.
Well, we've got an interesting question here. What is one downside to Kickstarter?
Downside to Kickstarter.
Yeah, I was a bit stumped with that one. I left that question alone for a while, but we've run out of questions. So,
well, I guess I'd probably go with you need a lot of time to dedicate to a Kickstarter.
I was going to say all-consuming.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does take an awful lot of your time, and it'll always take more than you've anticipated or allocated to it. I mean, it was difficult, and the difficulty in the biggest thing with making comics, which Shaun touched on before, was distribution. And when you're printing, self-publishing your book, the biggest issue you have is, how do I get it into comic stores? How do I get it into retailers? And there's a certain level of legwork and postage involved with that. Whereas Kickstarter, I won't say replaces the retailer, but it does facilitate a much wider audience than you're going to have with a retailer.
Yep.
And the thing is, it can hurt your retail sales because, if I've got 15 orders on my Kickstarter from Canberra, I know that's at least some of them would have otherwise bought it at D's or Impact. So by running Kickstarters, I might be reaching more people, but I'll find that my retail orders for that book will be reduced for that reason, because the people who were waiting to buy the book are going direct rather than going through their normal retailer for comics. So it's, I don't know if that's a downside, but it's something to consider.
Yeah, I think sometimes with that is what you sometimes might lose is the opportunity to get more readers if you're no longer in stores because your book's no longer there. So I guess that can kind of be the downside of Kickstarter. But one thing that I've realized a lot doing doing more and more creative titles through comics to movies is that us as creators and creatives, we're content rich but time poor. A lot of us, have full-time jobs, or we're doing other work on top of this. It's very, very rare until you get to a certain point that this is your full-time gig. And when it's not, it makes it quite difficult to do things like Kickstarter and Indiegogo and crowdfunding and all of that type of stuff. Because if you're not doing it and you're not promoting it and you're not reaching out, you're not getting back to people and not commenting and responding to messages and all of the stuff that comes with running the Kickstarter, then it's not going anywhere because it's you. And that's why I see a lot of the more successful Kickstarters now have at least 2 or more people involved. And I find when you have 2 or more people involved, then that time part kind of gets spread a little bit more evenly. But Kickstarter can just be all consuming. I can remember that. I shouldn't say I don't do it anymore because I do, but that refreshing every 5 seconds to see if you've got another backer and everything like that.
Yeah, we all do it.
Is kind of a downside to running a Kickstarter. But I would definitely finish off saying that there's much more upside to Kickstarter and crowdfunding than there is downside. But with anything platform, I think there's going to be some sort of downside. So,
yep. And I'll make this our last question because time is getting close to up. But we've got your thoughts on outsourcing promotional services.
Well, given that I'm offering that,
I was going to say
I'm all for it.
You're for it, yeah. Funnily enough.
For me, you need to understand what you're paying for.
Yeah.
And I think you need to have clear expectations around what you're going to get for what you're paying. There are a lot of promotional services out there that just do what you would normally do. So if you're time poor and you don't have the ability to do that promotion, then that's great. You pay that person to do that. But if you're doing that and you're paying someone else to do exactly what you're doing, well, then that doesn't kind of make sense. But there's just, unfortunately, there's just so many scammers out there, and that's probably one downside to Kickstarter is that it's not really those services are not really policed in any way. And I can say I've been burnt by one before. I've paid for a service, got absolutely zero out of it. It's a learning experience. So I guess if you're going to go through a promotional service, ask for projects that they've worked on. Ask for feedback from other creators if they've used that service. Let them ask them what type of data they're going to provide to show you that they're adding a service and providing a service. You touched on before, does Google Analytics. That's a great way where you can show whether people are coming to your platform. For my experience, I paid someone to get those 2,000 people to my website. Yeah, we had 2,000 people come. They were all from Bangladesh, and they stayed for less than a second on my Kickstarter, which is practically impossible. So it was just a bot that had done it.
Yeah.
So it's you learn as you go. Kickstarter is something that we're like I always say, I don't know everything about it. I'm still learning. I think there's things that I can do better and everything. But that promotional stuff is just do your research and due diligence before you fork out the money. And it's interesting that you guys both put up your hand saying that you've had a similar experience as well. So.
Yeah.
Might have been from the same person, actually.
I think it was the same person, actually.
Oh, really?
But you also, as soon as you launch a Kickstarter, you immediately get messages.
Oh, yeah.
From these promotions. I've had about 15 in the last 5 days where they're like, "We can do this for you," and it's just spam.
Yeah, just spam.
Yeah. I find it interesting where like I had done like one ages ago, the one that I got burnt by, and now I've had like 3, and it's the exact same web page, but just like it's actually 3 different websites, but it's the exact same web page, and I'm just like, oh, how dodgy is this? They haven't even bothered to actually change the layout of the website; they've just copied it, and I was like, dodgy.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, but buyer beware, I guess.
Yeah,
except if you're going through me, because you'll get
exactly. Sorry, except if you go.
Cool. Well, thank you, Shaun. Thank you, Daz. Really great talking with you guys. Listening to you guys more in my case. That was awesome information. I hope it helped a lot of people who were listening. And it's also recorded so people can watch it later. So that's great. Thanks for your insights. Thanks for your tips. And thank you for being part of the Aussie Comic Book Day. I keep getting that wrong. So I've been doing initials, like the initials for it. And I keep going to say the initials instead of the words. So Aussie Comic Book Day, ComX live stream day. Thank you very much for being part of it. Thanks for coming on board. If you want to just quickly give a little spiel about your Kickstarter in the last couple of minutes.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. The 13th labor is based around Hercules, who's hurtled into the future, where his final descendant has to fight in an intergalactic tournament to save Earth. So it's a fantasy sci-fi epic for all ages. It's up on Kickstarter at the moment, issues 1 and 2. We are just over $1,000 away from our target, so any
awesome
support is super appreciated. So
so mine's called Old Man Rufus. It's a futuristic tale of the Killaroo series that I've been publishing for the last 20 years. Got Ryan Vella on board to draw it. I think we're about 115% funded now, so we're into the gravy side of things, which is good. Like every extra dollar will actually a percentage actually goes back to Ryan as a bonus payment. So
that's awesome.
The more we make, the more the artist makes as well. Basically post-apocalyptic Australia in the year 2050. Killaroo's probably towards the end of he's getting a bit old in the tooth. And I guess if you think Clint Eastwood in Gran Torino, that's probably the kind of sense of the character these days. But now he has a couple of sidekicks. He's got a little possum that sits on his shoulder that looks really kind of cute and innocent and is not. And he's also got a wedge-tailed eagle that basically acts as like a drone, kind of gives him vision from above. So it's sort of like it's a futuristic way of keeping track of where he's at and who's coming at him. So it's a fun book. And it's looking great, and we've got heaps of amazing variant covers, probably too many, but you can just pick which one you like.
Nice.
And that's at oldmanrufus.killaroo.com. Cheers.
Awesome. Thank you very much, guys. And I have to go so I can go make it to the next one. So
have
a great one. Thank you very much. And see you in the next one if you're watching.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Yeah.
See ya. Hope you enjoyed the show. If you're after some more Aussie Comic Book Day goodness, Just go to the link comx.cx and check out the schedule. Thank you very much.